Welcome back to the Nursing Post podcast, All Nursing All the Time with Ashley and Rosa. In this episode, we discuss the first pig to human heart transplant. Our goal is always to inform and spark conversation. We all know in medicine that pigs are no stranger to us. They are eerily very similar. We all know that insulin comes from them. We're using, pig insulin for human diabetes. Their skin is pretty similar to ours, and that's, I think, why they are used a lot in medicine. Xenotransplantations are transplants of animal organs into humans, which have been on the horizon for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Things in this world, they move rather quickly. We remember Dolly, the sheep that was cloned. There's all these things that have been going on for several years, and we're just now finally getting it mastered and perfected. And so it's not surprising to me that we are having transplants from animals to human.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say things shock me, but it's kind of like, as a nurse, when you've been in it for a while, nothing kind of shocks you anymore. But as
Just
I was
numb to it all.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just like the awe factor kind of is like not there anymore. And so when I was reading through these articles, because I love to read the news, I love to watch the news, like that's one of my, I guess, hobbies, you can call it. And I came across this article and I was like, who's going to think this article is cool? Ashley. So of course, what do? I send it to you.
It's funny because I did read a lot on it, and I know it's something, even years ago, we had tried transplanting organs, and it failed miserably. Like, when I say failed miserably, like 48 hours, the person was unfortunately deceased. There's not a ton of information out there right now on this particular case or xenotransplantation. It's very, very new. The actual transplantation is new. The concept is not new.
Yeah. We've been doing transplants forever now, when you think about it.
Right. Well, even animal to human transplant, that whole thought process is not new either. That's been something that people have been working on for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But on January 7th of 2022, that was the first pig to human heart transplant done in the United States. And it was done right at our back door at the University of Maryland Medicine, which I thought to be very interesting.
Me too.
And a pig heart was used for two reasons. One, he couldn't use a human heart for transplant because he had a history of noncompliance. And anybody who's in the transplant world knows that that is an automatic no. Don't come at me. I don't make the rules. But if you're not compliant, they're not going to give you an organ, period.
Generally, if you're listed as non-compliant, your file doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't come off of anybody's desk and go anywhere else.
No, the doctors aren't even going to refer you to a transplant center because and I hate to say it this way, but quite frankly, it would be loss of valuable resources.
Well, you have to think about it.
Working up a patient who historically would not do what the doctor said. This is not like a little thing where if you don't do what the doctor says, you'll get sick. Like, you could die, and then they ultimately wasted an organ on you because you didn't do.
That's the point.
And then somebody else is dying 17
because
days
they should have gotten the organ that you got because they're compliant, but you weren't. That's exactly right. The point.
So that's one of the things is he couldn't get it because he was non-compliant. He had a history of non-compliance. I shouldn't say he's non-compliant now, but previously. And then the other option for him that some people may ask about is using like an artificial heart. He couldn't do that because he had an arrhythmia. So that kicked him out of that. So ultimately, he was a dead man walking, and he was going to die, or he could try this. And this, of course, is not something that's FDA approved. So they asked for a compassion use, kind of like an emergency use authorization. They asked for like a compassion use authorization. And the FDA did approve that because ultimately the guy that was getting the transplant said, yeah, I know I could die, but I'm dying anyways. And at least if this works or doesn't work, you'll learn something to help the next person. Which I thought
I have
was
to
amazing.
give him kudos. Yeah, you have to give the guy kudos. Like, he realizes what he's done to himself, because eventually when you don't take heart and blood pressure medications, this is what it boils down to. It boils down to you needing a transplant, whether it be of your kidney, your lungs, what have you. That's generally what long-term uncontrolled hypertension and heart disease leads to. And so at least give him kudos for saying, you know what, if this doesn't work for me, at least you'll know more for the next person.
Yeah, and I think that probably had a lot to do with the FDA saying, something, okay. Like, he'd be the first, that it's not something like, oh yeah, we know what's going to be the outcome. He knew that they didn't know the outcome, but he was pretty much like, well, I'm dying anyways, so why not learn something if you can't save me?
I actually appreciate the fact that the FDA kind of had, I hate to use like the word loophole, but just the fact that they even have anything called like for compassionate use. Like, I didn't even know that existed.
I didn't either until I researched this, because that was one of my questions. I was like, man, I know this ain't approved. That would have made the news.
Absolutely. I mean, this made the news anyway, but
right. But I mean, if the FDA is like, oh yeah, you can start using pig hearts now, I mean,
everybody jumping on. There'd be so many surgery rooms and ops rooms would be booked, I'm telling you. But kudos to them too.
One of the things that I think that we need to be clear about is this pig was genetically modified. And it's so
we've done
I'm like, it's a GMO heart,
Yes, it is a GMO heart. And we've done an episode before on GMO. So if you don't know what GMOs are, visit that podcast. But I cannot say that I'm surprised. I can't.
Well, and that's where that CRISPR technology has made it so easy to genetically modify. And I tried to look to see like what was genetically modified. Nobody really wants to give it up. I'm not surprised. But what I did, I've read a couple different things. And ultimately, what was across the board was there were 10 genes modified. Some were taken out to try to help prevent rejection and like fatty excess growth, because it's a pig heart, not a human heart. And then other things were put in to make a human body be more receptive, help with like the inflammatory response. Now, people have speculated like, oh, they did this, that, and the third, but almost most of the articles, there were always slight variations. So I don't want to say specifically what was edited, because I don't think we really know.
Well, and that would be like, McDonald's giving up their secret sauce.
Right. And I get that. So I didn't do like a ton of digging, particularly for that reason. Ultimately, it's not going to matter for the sake of this podcast what was genetically modified. The company that actually did this was through United Therapeutics, which is a very big pharmaceutical company. And they have a website. It's called Pipeline and it's spelled UNITHER.com. And they have a ton of information. No, let me scratch. They have some information on like pig heart, like this xenotransplantation. It's not a lot of information, but they actually have other information about transplantation that's pretty cool. I went down a rabbit hole on their website because they're learning to grow organs and take rejected organs that are not fit for transplantation and make them fit for transplantation and then giving them back out. So it's kind of cool. Nonetheless, that's off topic, but
it's a game changer though.
It really is.
How many people are on the transplant list? This right now we're talking
thousands.
about a heart, but you and I both know, because we've also done an episode on this, that the number one organ is actually kidneys. Like everybody needs a kidney, which is also a side effect of having uncontrollable hypertension. You know, it affects your kidneys. And if you can do this with a human, pig heart to a human, then what's to say that you can't do this with, you know, a pig kidney to a human kidney? Exactly. Can you imagine how much of a game changer that would be? It's already a game changer if this is successful and this man lives and he's able to be studied for years and years and years. This is a game changer, because all those people that are on a waiting list, I hate to say it, and I know, you know, PETA is probably going to get all over me, but, you know, pigs are easier to multiply and replicate and, you know, birth than other humans are. So the number of people that would be on the top of the transplant list would dramatically decrease. So
and the more you do it, the better it will be. And it is interesting. I do want to say that this heart was injected with like a blend of hormones and cocaine.
Just hey, Coca-Cola was made with cocaine back in the day.
Well, I don't.
It is what it is.
You know, it does have medical uses.
It does.
They don't really know why it worked, and the surgeon that transplanted the heart was like, "I don't really care why it works. We just know that it's going to help with not getting rejected, so we're doing it." So
well, when you think about it, it's an opioid, it's pain medication. Maybe it's an anti-inflammatory. I don't know. I haven't studied cocaine. Don't really know what it works or how it works, other than the movies that I see on TV. So, I mean, it worked in this case, and I'm sure the guy is very happy.
Oh yeah. He's got a long road ahead of him.
Absolutely. Where it's chartering unknown territory. So, you know, there's going to be hiccups for sure.
Well, speaking of hiccups, that is a perfect little segue. And you started it when you said PETA.
Because I know, like if they listen to this, they're going to be like all over my back.
Well, they did state that animals aren't tool sheds to be rated, but complex, intelligent beings
that eat people.
I'm just saying.
I know. That's devil's advocate.
Because that is part of, because there are some ethical and technical hurdles that we're going to have to jump over.
Absolutely.
PETA is one of those hurdles.
We're using it already for insulin.
Mm-hmm.
I get what PETA stands for, and I'm all for it. I get it. Like, trust me, I do.
I feel like
they have done a lot. You know what I mean? They've done a lot. Definitely in the cosmetic world. They've held their own, and I applaud them for that. But we're talking about human lives and saving human lives.
Yeah, it's not about, like you would say, it's not about makeup and shampoo and conditioner. This is far beyond that. The other thing, though, is what about the religious component?
Well, you already know that there are some religions who are against pork products. And then you also have other religions that are not going to put anything artificial in their bodies, whether that be, and not even artificial, like anything, including blood. Right. So we know as nurses, off of the top of our head, the two religions and cultures that do that.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with what you believe or how you believe. You know, my saying, as long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting the children or other people, it really doesn't bother me what you're doing at home.
Correct.
And I understand that it's going to have some ethical issues for those people who believe differently. And to each its own. Like, nobody's forcing this on them. Everybody has informed consent in 2022. Everybody is read and knows their rights that are available to them, and they have the opportunity to, you know, reject or agree.
Well, it is interesting because the surgeon is actually a practicing Muslim, and he was very open about this. And evidently, he did get a lot of what I would call flack from his family, actually, not from coworkers, like really from his family. Specifically, there was one article that said that his father was like, is there not any other animal that you can use? Like, they didn't even want him performing the surgery.
Well, did their family think like a bird was going to do the job?
And so, well, I guess, find somebody else that can do it, like that doesn't have the same beliefs. I'm not sure. I didn't look quite that far into it, but he did actually, I think, struggle a little bit with this at first. And it was Dr. and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but it's Dr. Muhammad Mohahudin, who is, like I was saying, a practicing Muslim, and pork is prohibited in his religion. But he looked to scholars and asked them, religious scholars, I should say, to get their input, and he was told that there is nothing greater in the eyes of God than saving the life of a human.
Well, I mean, that's our creed in medicine, is first do no harm, and our goal is to save lives. That's first and foremost. I think when you take that oath, of course, that doesn't negate your own personal values or beliefs, but that's when ethically you have to remove your belief from the practice of medicine so that you don't judge and you're not biased.
Right. Absolutely. But it is going to put, I think, people in some sticky situations, because now how is the FDA going to say who is eligible for these and who is not?
I don't know. I mean, it could go a ton of ways. Like, who's to say somebody's not going to take a pig from their backyard and say, hey, modify this. You know what I mean? Like, I know it doesn't work that way. Everything always ends up in a petri dish, and from donated and unused embryo cells, that's where life begins. But who's to say? And I'm not opposed to it if it works for this gentleman and he's healthy and he gets to have an extra 5, 10, 15 years. Like,
it would be amazing. That would be a huge win. To me,
that's progress for somebody who only has 6 months to a year. 5 years is better than 6 months. And as long as his quality of life is good, then the quantity will come with it.
And that's really what matters. Do you think by us doing this that we've opened Pandora's box?
I think we opened up Pandora's box when we were cloning Dolly. I think we opened up Pandora's box when we were cloning ears in a petri dish. I think we opened up Pandora's box when we were making hamburgers in a petri dish. So this isn't, like I said, this doesn't shock me. We've been using, pigs for a long time in medicine, and cow. Bovine, we've been using that as well. So who's not to say the next one or the next time, it won't be something from a cow.
Yeah,
I think Pandora's box opened a long time ago, and we're just now seeing the direction in which she's going.
Right. Because I'm sure that there are surgeons who want to save their patients. And I think I said earlier, 70 people die a day waiting for a transplant.
It's groundbreaking.
And if you have one animal, like how many transplants could one pig provide? One of those things where, of course, it's something that has to be researched a whole lot more than it is right now. There needs to be a lot more studies done, but ultimately, if we're doing this, and then we have other companies that are essentially recycling organs that cannot be used for transplant for whatever reason, and then they're working on growing now organs, would it essentially cure the issue that we have now with the lack of organs?
I don't think it'll ever cure anything because, in medicine, everything is preventative. If you start from the beginning, then the point of it is that you won't need to be on the transplant list.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is there's way too many people already on it.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is what it takes to help people and to save lives, I'm all for it. But I think you bring a good point and a good case to it. Like, where do we draw the line ethically, morally, and scientifically?
And I think every person will answer that slightly different.
I agree. For our show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.thenursingpostpodcast.com. It'll give you all our references, our episodes. You're able to subscribe. You can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform. And as always, we would love for you to share your thoughts and your comments on this particular article, as well as any other podcasts that we've done. And we want to thank you again for listening to the Nursing Post.